Welcome to Secretly Sporty. I'm your host, Sebastian Langdell, and I'm joined here with my co-creator, Austin Rackles. Hey, Austin.
Hey, Sebastian. How's it going?
It is good. How are you doing?
I'm good. So last night, I knew I needed to work out. Wasn't really feeling it, so I scrolled through the app that I use, and I was like, I want something that feels fun, that I'm going to be excited to do. And what I landed on was cardio kickboxing.
This is funny because just yesterday, I attended my first cardio kickboxing class at my gym.
Well, I would like to say that this is just because we are connected. Do you think it's perhaps because we just did an episode with a boxer?
I think you might be onto something. I think, indeed, Laura Vandenberg's episode where she talked so much about falling in love with boxing and her whole journey there, it was inspiring.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fun things about this show is we get to hear about so many different types of exercise and get inspired to try new things.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any other activities that you're hearing about that are kind of on your list?
Well, you sometimes talk about your Aikido days, and
Hmm.
I did Shotokan karate in college, and I absolutely loved it. And my Shotokan days might be over, but I have been really curious to try Tai Chi.
Oh, yeah, same. Tai Chi, Qigong. Bouldering's up there for me. I have a lot of friends here in Austin who go bouldering on the regular. And after our Kwan's episode, I was thinking, yeah, I really want to try that out.
Definitely. And I would say today's guest had me thinking that I really need to spend more time in the ocean. It's actually kind of embarrassing considering that I live in LA, how infrequently I make it to the beach. But the way this guest talked about the ocean and surfing was very inspiring.
Yeah, for sure. She paints a beautiful picture of what it's like to be in the ocean in Northern California at sunrise, occasionally encountering other species.
The interspecies relationship was a big theme in this interview.
Our guest today, Bonnie Tsui, is the author of 3 books, including Why We Swim and On Muscle.
Yeah, and she is a very passionate surfer and swimmer. She has done the swim from Alcatraz to San Francisco. She makes it a goal to get into the water every day.
Why We Swim has some just amazing narratives of just wild swimming, places like the English Channel and the Cook Strait that connects the 2 main islands of New Zealand.
Yeah, she went very deep into the writing process of that book and how she sort of developed that structure and how it came about.
She kind of discussed those moments when you feel like you're treading water a little bit, and then when you get into the flow, if you catch my meaning.
I'm picking up that metaphor you're putting down.
Should we get into it?
Let's get into it.
Here is Bonnie Tsui. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Bonnie. It's so good to see you.
It's great to see you, Sebastian.
We like to start by asking about your most recent workouts. So what did you do?
It was before dawn this morning. I went surfing, as I often do, in the dark. Civil twilight is the time of day in which I really inhabit with my surfer friends. Civil twilight is that period of time. I think it's when the sun is between 6 degrees below the horizon and sunrise, and it's just this like glorious in between liminal space, and the light was especially beautiful today, and there's a little bit of energy in the water. It was a high tide, and so it's where I think I feel most alive.
Anything in particular, like with the waves good today? How'd it go?
This is like a little bit inside baseball, but the tide was a little full. So there's like this sense of like ballooning, like when you paddle for a wave and then you're dropping in. And so there's like this pause, but you still have to keep working hard to get into the wave. And so there's a sense of like, it's almost like we talk about the waves being pregnant.
Uh-huh.
So you have to fight your way in. And then when the wave finally breaks, it's like this big shove towards shore. And it's just, you're dancing with your dance partner in all of the moods of the ocean. I love to kind of match that, and that's always the hope, that you're doing it in unison. You're doing it in a way where you're working together instead of fighting all of that energy, which you're never gonna win,
Yeah. Do you have a favorite place to surf? I mean, is it where you live or is it elsewhere?
It is. I mean, I think so I live in Berkeley, so I live on in the East Bay. And so, within an hour, there are many spots. There's Ocean Beach in San Francisco, there's
Mhm.
Pacifica about 15 minutes south, and there's all these spots in between.
Mhm.
Surfing was not something that I came to until I moved to California, and I would say that that's when I really fell in love with California was when I started surfing.
Yeah.
I like the flavor, I like the color, I like the grit of it. I like that Bay
Right.
Area surfing is like this. I like that it's hard and it's kind of crappy sometimes, literally. There's runoff or, from a big storm. But I also really enjoy the cold water aspect of surfing because like it's not always beautiful because that's not what life is. And I think that
Mhm.
in a lot of great ways reflects, mood and also just like the kinds of people who go out there and I
Yeah.
like that.
When you moved to California, what year was that?
It was 2003. I didn't start surfing right away, and I would say that I was always such a New Yorker, and all my
Mhm.
family is back east, and I kind of fought it for several years. But when I found a thing here that basically I would say reinvigorated, like I swam, like I kept swimming, like I found some great pools, and I had a great swimming community. But
Mhm.
I think when I started surfing was when I was just sort of like, oh, like this is what it's all about. In that it was something new to be excited about, learn. And it's just like a lifelong, that lifelong curiosity about your abilities and specifically your physical self, that your investigation of that. I think that helps to keep you both grounded in your body and really attentive to it as what you inhabit, but also informs for sure for me my creative life.
How do you see it kind of interrelating with your creative life?
My relationship with the water specifically and with swimming, again, like I grew up as a swimmer from a very young age. And so it was
Mm.
always just a part of my life. And I never really interrogated it though, like from an intellectual standpoint, until I started researching a book I wrote in 2020 called Why We Swim,
Mhm.
or rather, it was published in 2020. And it took some editors who I worked with to point out to me that actually I had been writing about swimming, I just didn't know it. Like, I
Mhm.
didn't realize that I was doing this where I would go on a work trip and then I would kind of find a body of water to swim in. Now I also look for bodies of water, obviously, to surf in or places to surf, rather. And I would write stories, sometimes travel stories that were kind of like attached to some of the things I was doing or essays. And I had a really wonderful editor friend of mine at the New York Times. He said, why don't you write a book about swimming? You're a swimmer.
Mhm.
You're doing this all the time. And I was kind of like, huh, well, what about swimming? Like swimming is a topic, it's not a book, right? It's
Right.
always a practice. And so trying to figure out creatively, intellectually, where I could sit with that and create something that was new.
Yeah.
I wanted to figure out what do I have to say about it and also what stories are there that I can share.
It's such a nice blend of kind of historical stories and also how things like swimming clubs came about and the difference in geographical like approaches to swimming in various different cultures and then also very contemporary stories. What was that process like in terms of structuring it and deciding now we're going to move back into the present tense or now we're going to move into a story that involves me as a main character?
That's such a good question. I mean, it was a lot of trial and error. First I was just casting a wide net trying to find the anecdotes, the characters, the stories, but also the facts. And so I just kind of
Mm.
like started collecting them like a magpie. After a while, I was thinking, okay, I felt like I collected a lot of interesting material, but how, again, right, to organize that in a way that someone will want to follow you there. Like you need to have a story.
Hmm.
So I really seized upon a mix of like both stories that like that could capture our imagination and kind of get us to the magic of what it is to be a human in the water because we're not born knowing how to swim like most terrestrial mammals. So why do we keep doing it? Why do we keep putting ourselves at risk? Again, like finding ways to interrogate basic questions of existence and what it is to be human and have a relationship with the water. And at the same time, come back to, what is it swimming for most people, right? And so
Mm.
swimming is survival, swimming is community, swimming is competition, it's flow. So like these
Yeah.
kind of different buckets, like these stories kind of shook out into and these themes and different ways of answering the question of why we swim. And it took a while to get there, but like I think all of us writers have had these very special relationships with certain editors in our lives who when we're kind of floundering around and ask them, this is what I'm struggling with. What do you think? Sometimes there's that one thing that they say to you that
Yeah.
makes it all come together, that
Yeah.
clarifies everything. And what this one editor friend of mine said to me was, why don't you just call it something as simple as why we swim? And that
Mm.
way everyone knows what it's about. And I
Yeah.
was just like, ding.
That's great. And I'm curious about the ways in which you feel like writing Why We Swim might have changed your relationship to swimming or to the water. I mean, did you notice anything changing after having gone through the exploration of writing the book?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think you had asked a question about the relationship with creativity, with swimming or with physical practice. And, again, like I didn't interrogate that relationship to that level until I wrote that book. And so I now, when I go to the water, I'm
Hmm.
very mindful. And I found myself, I do remember the first time I was writing, trying to get at what I'm thinking about when I'm swimming, right? Because everyone
Hmm.
always asks, like, what do you think about when you're running? What do you think about when you're
Yeah.
swimming? And certainly like for long periods of time in which you don't have the distraction of conversation or you can't listen to something. And obviously, technology is always infiltrating those spaces. But I think somehow water has resisted that. You can listen to things in the water, but by and large, most people do not. Like you'll see people swimming in the pool,
Mm.
and maybe one person has bone conduction, like
Yeah.
headphones on or whatever. And it's because there's something so integral to the practice that you are just alone and floating and flowing with your thoughts. And so I do pay attention to what I'm thinking about. I do pay attention to what my body's feeling. I do pay attention to what I'm worried about. And also how I feel when I get in is so different from how I get out. I think what I'm trying to say is that I am more attentive to all of those changes, and I appreciate so deeply the privilege of getting to do that and to pay attention
Mm.
to that and to get the joy and the resources, that I refill from those practices.
Absolutely. It is rare these days to have an activity that makes it, hard to be wired in to music and podcasts and social media
Right.
and the constant stream.
Yeah, even when I'm on land, right? So even when I'm in the gym and I'm lifting, I try to at least have a period of time in which I don't have headphones in because I like to kind of take in what everyone else is doing, and I really like the people in the places where I go and work out. And so I am paying attention, and I'm not necessarily talking to people, but I'm just kind of listening or like being
Hmm.
aware or like kind of working in to, use some equipment or something. And it's those little moments of like community and kindness and being gentle with each other and all of that. I mean, that helps to also fill my cup, like to feel
Mm.
like I'm part of a thing. And so obviously there are days in which I just like put my blinders on and plug my ears with something because I just don't want to talk to anyone. But I think for the most part, I would say that if I'm allowing myself to be open to that interaction, or however gentle it is, not necessarily that it's like the most profound conversation I've ever had, or
Mm.
or interaction with a stranger, that I do feel better. And I think that that's
Mm.
part of it.
One of my favorite stories in the book is when I think it's Kim Chambers is swimming the Cook Strait between the two main islands of New Zealand and realizes halfway through, and I think it's a 17-mile distance, that this dolphin pod has kind of descended
Yes.
and swims with her for the
Mhm.
remainder of the swim, perhaps with the goal of fending off sharks, because this is a very shark-rich area.
Yes.
Are you drawn to these kind of like epic swims, swimming the Cook Strait, swimming the English Channel, that type of thing?
On some level, yes. Most levels, no.
Okay.
I just recently did this interview in The Believer with open water swimmer Amy Applehans Gubser. She's a friend of Kim Chambers, and she was the first person in 2024 where she swam to the Farallones from San
Hmm.
Francisco. So everyone has kind of who has done that has gone the other way, right? So
Okay.
from the Farallones to San Francisco, and she swam from San Francisco to the Farallones. I mean, you're ending up in the toughest, coldest, scariest part, right?
Mhm.
And you're not swimming away from the sharks, you're swimming to the sharks.
Mm.
And then we were talking about swimming from Alcatraz, which we have both done. She can see the Fairlands from her house in Pacifica. Like she'll roll out of her house in the morning and be taking a walk on the cliffs, and she'll look out and see the islands, the shark tooth islands on the horizon, and she'll say, "Oh, I was out there, I did that." And I said, in a very, very minor way, I think that when I cross the Bay Bridge and I see Alcatraz, and she's like, no, that's one of the world recognized difficult swims, and I was like, yes, and to me it was a big deal to do that, like to because there are sharks patrolling around. It is freezing.
Yeah.
The currents are insane, rushing in and out of the Golden Gate, and yet at the same time, I'm just like, that is not what you did. You were swimming in the open ocean in a shark gathering area, and they had seen like fresh kills of like seals like floating around
Mm.
when she's swimming. Like all of these things she's telling me, I'm just like, and then hell no. Like just she is such this amazing person. I encourage everyone to kind of look up her story, Amy Gubser, but she's a rare bird and just is like kind of driven by like what
Yeah.
kind of people do those things. Not me. I don't know if you are, Sebastian. Maybe you are.
For me, it's the jellyfish and the sharks too, I
Oh
think
God, no. Yeah.
that keep me out of that realm. But I'm very impressed by your Alcatraz swim. I'll say that.
That one was fun. But I also feel, again, like, like I was telling you and I was telling Amy, like, I'm really proud that I did that. But I also am kind of like, I don't need to do that again.
Yeah. Do you have any big kind of either swimming or surfing goals, either for the immediate future or the long run?
I mean, I have been very lucky to surf in lots of different incredible places.
Mm.
I think my goal now, as I reach the end of my 40s, is to like keep doing it as long and as well as I can. Again, like I didn't come to it until I was like almost 30, and then I had like 2 kids, and then so it was like a very interrupted flow of time in which I've been surfing, and also like that I've been surfing in a committed way, in a way that I really feel like I've been progressing in a way that feels satisfying. It feels good, feels competent.
Hmm.
So I think I have a sense that more of a sense as I'm getting older, that I just want to be doing all the things that allow me to keep doing that and keep
Yep.
having like the goodness that comes out of, a dawn patrol. I've always done this, but like getting into the water as many days as possible is always like whatever the form it may look like. Is
Hmm.
it the pool on a day that's like freezing and rainy, or is it like a stormy dawn patrol in the Pacific where I'm just going with friends to mess around and like just to get in? Does that sort of rambling, but does that answer your question?
It totally does. I'm curious about a couple of things. One is, for the listener who might not know what progress looks like on a surfboard. So, like, when you get to your level of surfing, what does that look like?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think feeling like every day I can have fun. Like, so
Mm.
whether that means knowing which board to take out to match the conditions, knowing when to go out, like tide, wind, swell, all that stuff. Because surfing is one of those things that really depends on so many different variables, that to be able to hold that in my head and not have it take up so much of my cognitive load to figure
Mm.
out is, I mean, that in itself is an achievement, I think.
Talking about this makes me think of that William Finnegan book, Barbarian Days. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that comes across there is just the kind of canceling out of fear so that you can be present in the moment and make these kind of precise
Yes.
decisions. Does that fearlessness come across, and does it kind of inspire a fearlessness in the rest of your life?
I think I don't think of it as a fearlessness, but I think about it as you have prepared for the condition. You have done the work to take out as many of the variables that would prevent you from going as you can. So I see it like that. I see it as like putting in the work to be prepared. I think you always have to have a healthy fear of the ocean, is what I'm saying. And
Mm.
I've seen too many things happen and heard too many stories to not feel that way at this point in my life. And so I think why I resist calling it a fearlessness is because I think that fear is healthy because there's a respect behind it. And so you
Mm.
do all the things to know what to do. So you make the right choices. But I think in that scaffolding, in that structure you've created is the freedom. And that's where I live, ideally.
Yeah, I love that. So beginning with a place of respect for the ocean and
Yeah.
its potential.
But, to your question about does that frame of mind inform everything else? Like, I
Mm.
absolutely think that's true. And I think you wrote this yourself in your piece for the Times about, how there's a fluidity between physical practice and creative practice and your writing and the rest of your life.
Mm.
These are things that are known to be true about exercise and specifically about lifting weights and just feeling embodied is that you feel capable. You're capable, you feel in a very palpable, tangible way that you are capable of doing the thing and
Yeah.
capable of doing the hard thing, capable of lifting the heavy thing or pushing past that big set that's coming from the horizon. Like, just to know in a very sensory way that Sebastian or me, Bonnie, can do that or did that this morning or did that
Mm-hmm.
yesterday. I think you take that with you
Yeah,
through the rest of your day, through tomorrow and the many tomorrows to come.
I like that. I mean, thinking about these like creative endeavors, right? Was it easier moving on to On Muscle? Was it easier for you to kind of like approach that book project using kind of the same language as your surfing terminology, but like having done the necessary work, having planned accordingly, having kind of figured out how to respect the book process?
You would think that it would be easier, but it's not necessarily. Or
Yeah.
rather, what I discovered was you may know what you need to do, but you still have to do the thing. You still have to
Mm-hmm.
do it. I was describing to you this process of figuring out the structure for Why We Swim and how like it was so terrific. Or rather, it was a struggle, and then it finally shook out, and it was this moment, aha moment, whatever. And I also knew from that the importance of a good structure. It didn't make figuring out the structure of On Muscle any easier, but
Yeah.
it made me know that I had to do it. I had to figure it out.
Right.
But also, I do think the same skills totally applied. So figuring out what I wanted to say, what I wanted to do, what I found interesting. I think trusting that maybe came a little easier. I know what I get excited about, and I know that that's a good sign. Like when that happens, I know it is a positive sign. And maybe not everyone's going to get as fired up about the fact that the muscles that control our goosebumps are muscles and really amazing and give us information about our existential state. And they're called erector pili. I mean, it's just great. Or that like the whale butt muscle is called a peduncle. Like I got very excited about these things, and they're all in the book.
Yeah.
I think that I have trusted a little bit more over the last bit of time that, if I find something really interesting, someone else will. And my job is to make it to try to convey that enthusiasm and the story and the information and the meaning of it to me as well as I possibly can. And also to tell lots of stories to give that expansive feeling of possibility.
I feel like muscle is having a day.
Oh, sure.
How do you witness that kind of cultural evolution towards the focus on muscle and the necessity of muscle?
I mean, I think it's really great. I think the biggest change is how muscle has become something that is for everyone and not just a certain kind of person or a kind of body or kind of a bodybuilder who looks a certain way, a person, a man, like oftentimes a man.
Right.
And so like I think strength, so muscle and then like strength as it applies to muscle and also like beyond like what the meaning of that is, like what it means to have a strong body and also a capable body. And what does that mean for you as a person in society? And are you allowed to be strong? Are you allowed to look a certain way? And also, are you allowed to have power in the world? And those are basic, but also essential and also very, the sort of surface level interrogation that I think is what comes up when we often think about muscle. And so it was important to me to peel back some of the layers behind why we think those things in our society and the history, and then also kind of challenge those notions and tell stories of people who can kind of turn those assumptions upside down in a way that's very positive, eye-opening, because we all have them.
Right.
And I think the degree to which we use them, can use them, give ourselves permission to use them, find value in them, meaning in them, sort of like as we go through our lives, that's all changing. And I think in overall in positive, progressive ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up, you would see people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Which is probably
Hmm.
like the exemplar of that kind of
Yes.
manly
he,
muscle where
I'm sure he's so pleased that that is the case too.
sure, yeah. And like thinking like, okay, if I'm not gonna be that and I have no idea how to get there, then what's the point? Like that's just not
Yeah.
for me. Whereas I know in my 30s, a big kind of turning point for me was I did Aikido for a while.
Mm,
The sensei, he was strong, clearly very strong, but not muscular in like a showy way. He had exactly the muscles he needed.
mm,
It started to
mhm.
change the way that I look at strength.
I love the Olympics for that reason
Mm,
because there is this insane range of bodies and excellence. And these people have shaped themselves to excel at the thing that they are doing. That is like looks so different. Again, like, to what you're saying, but I marvel at it because I love to see people excel.
right.
I think that we love sports because going back to like lifting a heavy thing is pretty basic. It's pretty essential. Has gone back many, many, many millennia. Like just like how we understand the world and inhabit the world physically, like as physical beings. And so, like I think to see someone like pick up a heavy thing or throw a heavy thing or run really fast, like those are things that we understand in a very primitive way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It kind of like taps into something that's timeless. What comes to mind when you think of like an especially euphoric fitness or exercise related memory?
I think I have to go back to this one day I was at Ocean Beach in San Francisco, and it was just this gorgeous, clear morning where like the light is just diffuse and pink, and floating on this glassy water, and the waves are just so clean. You can see them coming from a mile away, and you just kind of like slide right in. It feels
Hmm.
effortless. And I was just kind of sitting in between sets, and I was waiting and watching, and dolphin came up to me.
Oh,
Again, this
wow.
is like having community with non-human beings maybe is just like it's special, right? And it's special when
Yeah.
you are in the environment that is their environment and you're a guest, but it feels friendly.
Right.
And so I had never actually had this happen before where, because there's lots of dolphins out there, and they kind of like often will come up close, but they don't seem to want to interact with you. But this dolphin came up and they're huge and they've got these beautiful, like kind of like firm, like almost like you can see the muscularity in them. I mean, I think it's just sort of like how they are. They just seem so shiny and full.
Mm.
And this dolphin clicked at me and I was just
Wow.
like, hello. I said, oh, hello. I just was like, in my instant, I didn't even think. I was just like, oh, hello. And it was like a flipper moment or whatever. And it was like such a
Yeah.
cartoon, like childhood thing. And I just was so shocked. And then the dolphin like kind of swam around me a little bit and then swam away. And I just thought like, I think this is a life highlight, maybe, like
Mm.
interspecies communication while I'm doing one of my favorite things in the world in a favorite place of mine on this glorious day. Like, I just feel like that's pretty ultimate. And I just kind of carry that with me, you know?
Yeah.
The wonder and, it sounds kind of like maybe silly to like tell it but I tell it anyway because like I feel like a kid
Oh, yeah.
playing, and
That's
that's like what I'm after always.
it almost feels like this dolphin was greeting you. And in that moment, it's like, I don't know this language, but I want to connect too, you
Yeah.
know?
Are we doing the same thing? We're both surfing. We're both out here.
Right.
This ocean
Am
is
I in your
great.
spot? You
Like,
asking me to
yeah,
move
like
or?
sorry, like do you want me yeah. Are we sharing?
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing. You know what it is? A lot of times I think being out in the ocean, what is very different and special about it is feeling the sense of awe. And by
Mm.
that I mean the sense of being a part of something so vast and that you are this tiny inconsequential bit of it, but also you're connected to all this vastness and glory and beauty. And, there's also the darkness. But I think why I go out or what I gather from being out there when it's dark, and then when the light comes is like I do appreciate something about that transition and witnessing the transition and being out there to bear witness to a day that's arriving. I do think doing the activity, the practice is absolutely physical, but that cycle of it helps me to feel like I belong there.
I love that. Well, we like to end on a lightning round.
Oh no. Uh-oh.
And the first of these is, if you had to choose cardio or strength training.
Oh, cardio. I mean, I just need the high. I think I need the high.
Protein shake or protein bar?
Ugh, shakes are gross.
Mm-hmm.
I'll eat a bar. I'll eat a bar any day.
How about cottage cheese or Greek yogurt?
Oh my God, Greek yogurt.
Yeah.
You pick good ones.
That question is very decisive. People are very
Yes.
firmly in one category or the other.
Very polarizing.
Yeah. How about to eat or not to eat before a workout?
Not to eat. Coffee. Coffee's okay.
And sauna or cold plunge?
Ooh, cold plunge and sauna. Cold plunge followed by sauna.
There you go.
Can I have it
There
both
you
ways?
go. Sure. Why not? You've earned it. Peanut butter on a banana or a date?
Banana.
Do you have a favorite post-workout snack?
Oh, yeah. Lately, I'll have a big bowl of yogurt and muesli and granola mixed with fruit. So banana, berries, whatever I have that's fresh, even like little slices of orange in there.
Yeah.
It's good. It's really good.
Would you rather meet your artistic hero or your athletic hero?
Oh. Ooh, that's really hard. What if they're the same person?
They could be. I mean, do you have someone in mind?
Oh, but no, I was actually trying to mash them together. Actually,
Yeah.
what I was trying to do was like make them fulfill the same obligation. I have to get back to you on that
Yeah.
one. That's hard.
Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Sebastian. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes.
Join us next time as we talk to arts curator Michelle Miller-Fisher about training for a marathon as a way to process grief, the joys of running through a city, and she tells us which race gives you a lobster roll at the end. See you then. Secretly Sporty was created and is produced by Sebastian Langdell and Austin Rackless. It's hosted by me, Sebastian Langdell, edited by Austin Rackless and Andy Rattinger. Our music is composed by Catherine Joy, cover art by Ben Wiseman, represented by Illustration Division Inc. This outro song you're listening to right now is Flint and Slate by Travis Weller. Special thanks to Chris Duffy and Liam Billingham. Please note that we are not medical professionals nor personal trainers. Not all exercises are suitable for everyone. Always consult a doctor before starting any new exercise routine or nutritional program. The views expressed in this show are those of the show's creators or the guests, and not those of any other entity or institution.